Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Coffee and Gaming. It's your dedicated gamer, the Eggman, Mr. J, and I'm here to come to you with 25 to 30 games that I've completed in 2020, and I hope it's something that you guys enjoy. So, here we go. Alright, guys, so for the sake of my sanity, I'm going to have my iPad with me to reference the games that I played, how long it took me to play them, and my rating on them overall. My rating is just my personal opinion. It's not, something to be taken with a heavy, sentiment. Just take it with a grain of salt. If you agree with it, great. Comment below. If you disagree with it, great. Leave a positive comment below as to why you enjoyed it and why you would give it a different rating. Alright, so with that being said, let's get into it. I am super excited to talk about this list. So, number one is going to be Little Nightmares. Now, I gave Little Nightmares a 6 out of 10, mostly because it's only a 2 to 4 hour game. Probably 4 hours on your first playthrough, probably more like 2.5 on your second or third playthrough once you kind of learn the game and learn the puzzles learn the puzzles for each of the levels to progress through the next room. Each world kind of has rooms to kind of go through. Each room kind of has a creepy little story that it tells almost as you're trying to solve the aspects of it to move on to the next room and eventually beat the level. It's a very creepy art style, but it's also kind of like got a cute art style too. I guess the main character is adorable is what I'm getting at, but like the rest of the characters are really, really grotesque and ugly and weird. But really cool style of gameplay, but at the same time kind of basic. Nothing much to it other than running around, jumping, and grabbing certain items here or there to kind of solve your way through a room. No real heavy boss battles or anything like that. The bosses that you defeat are usually defeated by solving some sort of puzzle that either traps them or kills them in some sort of CGI cutscene manner or something like that. So again, 6 out of 10. I think that's a pretty fair score. It's by no means crapping on the game or saying it's not worth a playthrough. I would definitely play through that game. I played through it twice. I mean, it's a good game. It's just not this amazing, mind-blowing experience that I thought it deserved anything more than a 6 out of 10. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to a game called Limbo. Limbo is another game that I gave about a 6 out of 10, mostly because, again, of the length of the game. I'd say your first playthrough might be somewhere within 2 hours, 2.5 hours, if you're really getting stuck on some certain things. But after you've completed the game, at least for me, I was able to beat the game anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes on my third playthrough because I just knew all the puzzles. I knew what to do to get through each section. I died a lot less times than I did the first playthrough. So, with that being said, because it's just kind of, again, a basic game, despite it being a fantastic game, I'm just going to give it a 6 out of 10. But both of these games won several awards, so I would definitely not shy away from them. Check them out if you haven't checked them out already, and enjoy. The third game I'd like to get into is a little RPG called Child of Light. I have it for the Vita and I have it for the Switch. I don't have the physical edition for the Switch though. I only have that digitally. But then I managed to find a copy for the Vita after I picked it up for the Switch digitally. Mostly because I am a Vita Island resident. I love the Vita, and I know that games for the Vita are getting harder and harder to come by, and are going to go up in price, if not already. I know some games are already up there in price, and so I try to collect as many Vita games as I can, as well as Switch and PS4 games. Overall, I love retro games too. I like collecting for the N64, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, certain Game Boy or Game Boy Advance games I'm into as well. So I'm into retro games. I grew up in retro games. I was born in '86, so I'm all about the retro games. I don't know. Check out Child of Light. It's a little RPG. Super fast. I'd say it's about let's see. It took me about 11 to 14 hours. I would say it took me more like 13 hours to get through it, but I'd say the average playthrough is anywhere from 11 to 14. And the reason for it just being just the style of the gameplay. It's a turn-based combat. The story is told in a very um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I guess I can't think of the word right now. Man, I'm drawing a blank. Like a lullaby almost. Like, it's like there's a lot of rhyming. It's like a fairy tale. It's told in a very fairy tale lullaby-esque style where all the words and all the lines tend to rhyme all the time. Hey, so with that being said, if you like turn-based RPGs, if you want a quick little one that isn't like 50 hours long, like all the Final Fantasies, check out Child of Light. Check it out on the Vita if you have it. Check it out on the Switch if you have it. I think it's for other consoles as well, like maybe the PS4 and the Xbox, but if not, you can always get it for the portable consoles, and that's a plus in my opinion. So check those out. With that said, we'll move on to a fantastic game, a basic game, but a fantastic game, and that is Gris. Now, the way I describe Gris is, because people go, "Is it what's the game like?" And I go, "It's there's no combat to the game. There's no enemies. There's no bosses. I mean, I think there's maybe like one boss. There's like this bird shadow thing. I don't want to spoil too much, but I mean, overall, like it's not a very difficult boss. It's more, I don't know. It's just that if that's the only combat in the game, then that might be the only legitimate combat that you face in the game is that bird. But there's not a lot of combat in that game. It's more running through levels, solving puzzles to get through to the next level, and collecting certain items so that you can move again forward to the next area. Mostly achieving colors. In this game, it's all about colors. I describe Gris as going through an art museum and enjoying the art, right? You walk through, you see your Van Goghs, you see your Michelangelos, you see your Picassos, you see your Rembrandts, you see your, Leonardo da Vinci's and all that stuff, and you're like, okay, cool. You see all these artists and their art, and you appreciate it, and that's kind of what Gris is. You don't really play the game to have this crazy combat experience or this crazy like gaming experience so much as it's a nice game to kind of just brisk through, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the art, enjoy the music, enjoy the soundtrack is incredible for it. Any screenshot, you can take any screenshot from that game and like frame it and put it on your wall, and it is art. I mean, that game is amazing. So for that reason, despite it only being, I want to say it was about 4 to 6 hours. Despite it being that short of a game, I actually gave it an 8 out of 10 because of the art and because of the music. I just think it's, for what it is, it's a fantastic game. So if you're looking for something like a Hellblade or a Super Mario or whatever, that's not what it is. And if you're going to rate it against something like that, then you're not going to find that rating to be fair. But if you understand what Gris is and understand that it's kind of like going through, an art museum, the Museum of Natural History or something like that, but on your Switch or on your PS4, if you like that kind of stuff, if you're into that kind of stuff, if you appreciate art, Gris is a easy 8 out of 10, if not even a 9 out of 10. But I'm going to be fair, because of the length of the game, 8 out of 10. So, let's see. After Gris, Celeste. Now, Celeste is a phenomenal game about depression, more or less. And all through the game, you collect these little strawberries that are placed throughout the levels. There's multiple strawberries in each level, and that's actually what kind of gives the game great replay value. Is even though the main game is only 10 to 14 hours, I want to say it was. Is that what it? 10 to 12. Maybe 14 if it's giving you a hard time, but I'd say easily 10 to 12 hours of main story gameplay. But you can always go back through the game after you've beaten the main story and try to collect all the strawberries. Or you can go through and play like a mirror. There's a mirror version of all the levels, and you can just basically try to reconquer all those levels, but going the opposite direction. It adds a little bit of more of a challenge to it, or just changes the experience a little bit sometimes. So really good replay value and a great story revolving around depression. So if you're somebody who suffers from depression, definitely check out that game. It's a really good. It's got a really good moral to the story, and the character is really awesome. Celeste herself, she's really great. So I would definitely check it out. I gave that game personally I gave it a 10 out of 10. Um, Maybe a 9 out of 10 might be more fair, but I just think that it's just super fun. It's fun, it's challenging, great story, great art style, great replay value. I mean, like it's all there. Great music, like, it's all there. I don't know what there is to not like about this game. You know what I mean? Like it's fantastic. So I don't see why it couldn't easily just be a 10 out of 10. But I can see, for the sake of not giving something absolute perfection, a 9 out of 10 could be argued. But in my opinion, it's a 10 out of 10 easily. So with that being said, let's move on to a game called Ape Out. Ape Out is a over-the-top style view, like bird's eye view of a game where you play as this ape trying to escape captivity, and you've got to basically kill all your captors as they are trying to keep you in your cage. There's a couple of different levels, not a lot. It's only like maybe a 4 to 6 hour game, not a long game at all. Definitely a lot of replay value. Don't get me wrong. It's super fun, super addictive. The music is random, so there's like a standard beat that goes through, or standard rhythm that goes through each level. But as you do things and affect what goes on, like blocking a shot from someone by grabbing somebody and using them to take the shot for you, and then throwing that body at the person who just took a shot at you, or clobbering people against the wall, or whatever it is, like different instruments come into play over the rhythm, and so each level kind of has its own random music soundtrack to it. It's really cool, really interesting, really fun to play. Again, not a long game. 4 to 6 hours. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I would definitely check it out. Not an expensive game either. That's a game I hope strictly limited or special reserve or limited run games will hopefully one day give a physical release to. But as of now, there is no plans for it as far as I know. The next game is a phenomenal game. It is called My Friend Pedro. It is a really cool. I'm a little Pedro squishy here. This game is a really cool twin stick. It's a side scroller as far as going through the levels. You side scroll and you kind of go up, platform, I guess, as you jump through different little obstacles and things like that. But what makes the game really fun is it's got this John Wick / Neo style of shooting where you can slow down time and then use the twin sticks to aim both your arms in a 360-degree motion and aim at the different characters and the different enemies on the level and take your shot, and make some really cool and interesting slow motion kills. I mean, it is a fun, addictive game, and the banana is, as you can see, it's kind of all over the box art. This is a special reserve game collector's edition, and basically it's actually number 699 out of 5,000. It's for all platforms: Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and PS4. So feel free to pick it up on any of them. It doesn't lose any of its quality on either platform. Mostly, the Switch. If anyone's worried about it losing quality on the Switch, it doesn't. Very fun, very addictive, great replay value, and a really cool story. But the banana is like a imaginary friend that's kind of talking to the main character, who happens to be a highly trained assassin, and so he's kind of like talking him through certain parts of the level. He's encouraging him through the game to get whatever revenge he's seeking to get, and it's just really funny, really quirky, but at the same time extremely addictive. So I would definitely check out My Friend Pedro if you haven't already. Super cheap as far as digital sales go. They have a standard edition over at like Best Buy and stuff like that, so you don't have to go looking for some crazy collector's edition. But if you can get your hands on this, by all means, it's super nice to have. I love keeping them. Um, as a collector, this is the kind of stuff that I go after. And then if I can get a good deal on it digitally, I will happily buy it digitally so that I can refrain from ever opening my physical edition, which is what I did with my friend Pedro, and which is what I did with my Hotline Miami, which is up there. I probably won't grab that one down, but yeah. Anywho, we'll get into Hotline Miami later because that's on this list. But definitely check out my friend Pedro. What did I give that game? I want to say I gave that game a 9 out of 10 just because all the things that I've already listed, I won't say it again. And it's about a 3 to 4 hour game, though. Unfortunately, not a super long game. There are about 40 levels. So, depending on how fast you can get through 40 levels, I mean, they're not very long levels. They're not super short either. They're fair. So, I'd say about, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours easily. Or, yeah, 2 to 4 hours, maybe 3 to 4 hours. But again, the replay value is there, and there's certain things to unlock, like big head mode and things like that. So there's things that you can end up unlocking as you play the game through it and get certain scores and find certain little secrets throughout the levels, throughout each level. So definitely check it out and have fun with that because that is addictive. So with that being said, we'll move on to a little game called Furi, F-U-R-I, Furi. Now, I gave Furi a 9 out of 10. It is about a 10 to 12 hour game on your first playthrough. The style of the game is basically boss driven. There's no actual levels to go through. There's no side scrolling. There's no platforming. There's no nothing. Each level is a boss. And you immediately go into combat with this boss. And as you progress through the boss, as you damage him more and more, they will change their techniques. Sometimes twice, sometimes up to 3 times. And so you're going to end up dying a lot as you're learning the patterns of these bosses. So it's got a lot of, die, come back and replay, die, try again aspects to it. But it's super fun, super addictive. The fighting and the combat is really interesting. And I can't recommend it enough. Really good music, really good art style. I think that's on all platforms as well. I have it for the Switch because I like taking them on the go when I can. For the most part, I buy games for the Switch unless it's a game that I feel is going to, for some reason, underperform in any shape, fashion, or form. Whether that's with frame rate or with just overall graphics or details, like The Witcher 3. I would love to have The Witcher 3 on the Switch to take it with me on the go, but quite frankly, it looks way too good on the Xbox and on the PS4 for me to really, I don't know. There's a lot of sacrificing playing it on the Nintendo Switch. As awesome as it is that the Nintendo Switch can pull it off, it's just a shame that it just doesn't look as crisp as it could. So, with that being said, I understand that there's probably ways to overclock your Switch and make it look as good as the PlayStation 4 or Xbox, but at that point you're probably sacrificing battery life and probably doing whatever other damage internally to the Switch. So, obviously not something I'd recommend, but I know that there's people who hack Switches and do stuff like that where they can accomplish things like that. I know nothing about that, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to sacrifice battery life just to get a couple extra, a couple extra graphics out of my game. So if there's any way I can get both, have my cake and eat it too, then yeah, I'd like that much better than sacrificing one or the other. So hopefully there's a Switch 2 down the line, and they can work out those kind of bugs with some new updated chips. I'm sure there's new graphics cards and processing chips that are coming out as time, since 4 years for the Switch, and I don't know how long, 7 or so for the Xbox and the PlayStation. So, yeah. Anyway, definitely check out Furi. What did I say? 9 out of 10 hour game. Highly recommended. It's super fun. That's got a physical edition, but it's rare. I would just stick with buying digital unless you can find it somewhere, somehow, for super cheap. The next game I'd recommend is a game called Moonlighter. Now, Moonlighter is a super fun rogue-like dungeon crawler. A little bit of some RPG aspects to it in the sense that you've got to, as you progress through the dungeons, each dungeon has 4 levels, three dungeon crawling levels, and then the fourth level is like a boss. And as you progress through each level, you obviously go back to your shop. So there's like a base, which is your shop, and anytime you leave the dungeon without dying and you get to keep your collectibles, you will bring it to your shop and you sell it to the villagers in your town. And so that's actually a really fun aspect of the game. But as you're doing so, you're gaining money and you're gaining new items from the dungeon that you can then go to this blacksmith, and he will create new weapons for you, new armor, new defenses, things like that that will help you progress through the dungeons and their levels so that you can eventually defeat the boss and then move on to the next dungeon and then rinse and repeat. Go through those. You'll probably get challenged with the first level or so. You'll come out of it with all your extra stuff. You'll sell it in your shop. You'll go back through. You'll get more of those same items. Now you'll go to the blacksmith with those items and the money you made from your shop. You'll make your items, your weapons, and you'll go through, and then you'll probably get to like the level 2 or level 3 of that dungeon, and then probably have to, you know, work your character up a little more from there, and then you can finally get to the boss, so on and so forth. Super fun game. Cannot recommend it enough. Great music, great art style. I sometimes find myself humming the music that plays when you're in the shop. I don't know why. It's just kind of addictive. It's so chill. It's on PlayStation and Xbox and the Switch as well. But again, it's not a game that gets sacrificed as far as graphics or frame rate or anything. As far, when it comes to playing it on the Switch, at least I haven't noticed it. And if there is, it's not drastic to the point where it's making me die or anything like that and lose all my stuff. So I got it for the Switch because I just love having it portable. And that's my recommendation. Overall, it's about a 14 to 20 hour game, so you'll definitely get your money's worth out of it if you can, especially if you can find it on sale. And I gave it a 9 out of 10. I thought it was really cool. I like the idea of I like the concept of the game. I'm into Zelda type games that very much reminded me of something similar to Zelda, but at the same time, very very much being its own thing, with like not copying Zelda in any way, but just the fact that it's a dungeon crawler. You know what I mean? Like that's why I like Zelda is the dungeon crawling aspects of it, and the fact that it's got a really cool story to it. And this game had a really cool story to it. A little weird, but overall pretty cool. And it has a really good dungeon crawling aspects to it. So definitely check it out. With that being said, let's move on to a little game called Gunman Clive. Gunman Clive are actually really, really fun games. I played both 1 and 2 and beat them really, really fast, actually. They're not long games at all. I would say they're 30 minutes, 60 minutes max each. So, 2.5 hours, you can beat both games. There's some replay value in them in the sense that there's multiple characters you can play the game as. So you can play as like Gunman Clive. There is a Native American character you can play as. There is a woman that you can play as. So instead of saving the damsel in distress, you can be the damsel that saves Gunman Clive. So it's pretty cool. So there's some replay value in them, even though they're really short. The art style is really cute, though. The gameplay is really fun, although a bit simple. Kind of reminds me of like old school NES style games, the way they plays, like ducking and popping up and shooting certain things and things like that. But what makes the game stand out are the boss battles. Every so often you'll get to this boss where it's kind of like this mechanical machine, and it's got certain weak points that you have to get to, and then once you eliminate those weak points, you expose like this core element of this creature or this robot, and at that point you can start attacking that core, and enough hits to that core, you'll eventually defeat the robot or the creature. So really, really cool boss battle aspect to it. So aside from the actual game, the side-scrolling levels themselves, the boss battles are really fun. So although it's short, I ended up giving it more of a 6 out of 10. I would have loved to have given it a higher score, There just wasn't enough of the game for me. Honestly, even 5 out of 10 wouldn't even be, I wouldn't even be afraid to give it a 5 out of 10 just because of how short they are. I mean, honestly, the length of the game is what hurts it more than anything. I mean, 2 games that I can beat in 2 hours. I remember getting to the end of those games and being like, oh, that's it? Like, no more? Like, ah. So it just left me wanting more, which I guess is a good thing, but that was just too short. So for that reason, I'd say a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 tops. But again, that doesn't say that it's a bad game. I would just definitely buy it on a sale. It's always on sale on the eShop, usually for a couple bucks. Sometimes they have the combo of both games bundled in, so it's even cheaper. So if you can find a good deal on that, definitely get them. And if you've got 2 hours to kill, um, rock through those 2 games, man. They're really fun. They are really fun. They're just not long. So with that being said, the next game on the list is actually from the same, I want to say, creator or developer, and it's called Mechtermination Force. I actually managed to pick up a copy from Super Rare Games, and I've kept it sealed because I have it digitally. But that's how much I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the game so much digitally that when I heard of a physical release coming out, I had to pick it up because I just loved the game. This game has no levels to it. Each level is a boss. And the bosses are just like the Gunman Clyde bosses, where you are introduced to this gigantic robot, and hence the cover, the Mechtermination Force. You can see the big robots on the cover. You're exposed to this giant robot, or introduced to this giant robot, and you are to attack certain pieces of its armor and certain weak points that it has until it exposes its core. And once its core is exposed, you can then attack the core and eventually defeat the mech. So with that being said, I think there was 10 to 14. I can't remember exactly. I'd say 10. Let's just go with a dozen. Let's say there's about a dozen bosses or a dozen mechs to go through, and you can upgrade your character and upgrade your firepower, your defenses as you go through the game. Very basic though, nothing too in depth or detailed as far as those upgrades go. But yeah, it's just like maybe change the style of your gun from like a regular shooter to like maybe some sort of plasma beam or something like that, or maybe some health upgrades, things like that. But really fun game, lots of replay value. The mechs are definitely really interesting and well designed. So definitely check that game out. Super fun. I think it's only about it's about a 4-hour game, 2 hours once you get your upgrades, and you can kind of go back through and crush all the mechs with your upgrades, and eventually get through it in only 2 hours. But yeah, 2 to 4 hours max. I gave it though a 8 out of 10. I can see a 7 out of 10 also being fair, but I gave it 8 out of 10 because I like the art, I like the bosses, I like the style of the gameplay, and I just like that idea of taking apart a boss piece by piece until you eventually expose this one crucial element that you eventually beat up enough times that the boss just is done. So I thought it was cool. Check it out for sure. All right, so that covers the first 12 games on the list, and I just wanted to go ahead and make this while editing because I did just realize that we're coming up on about a half hour, and that might be a long video if I were to continue on. So I'm going to break this up into a couple parts, hopefully just 2 parts, but it might end up being 3. Yeah, I'm going to try to go ahead and get it into 2 parts. So keep an eye out for the second part. It should be up in the next couple of days, no more than a week, and yeah. Give this video a like, give the channel a subscribe, go ahead and share the video, share the channel, and make sure you hit the notification bell so that you are notified anytime I put a new video up. So thanks for checking out the video, hope you liked it, keep an eye out for part 2, catch you guys later.